Good afternoon, everybody. I want to talk today about exploration in history, mostly since 1500, and to focus on what historians are increasingly calling three great ages of exploration. This is a term that was developed by Stephen Pine, a good friend of mine, and I've adopted it here, and I think it's well worth looking at in the context of this. Anyway, let's just talk a little bit about exploration, how it has taken place over time. Maybe there's some analogies that we can point to. And this will be, as the title says, a breathless survey. I don't want to spend too much time on this, except to say that Leif Erikson, before the Renaissance, Leif Erikson, Marco Polo, Cheng Ho, and various other individuals throughout human history have undertaken explorations. I guess I would draw your attention to one image here. This is a Leif Erikson artist rendering. You may recall the Chinese treasure ships and fleet that undertook exploration between about 1407 and 1433 for the Chinese Emperor Zhu Yi. These ships were massive and very capable. Their technology was much beyond what Europe had at the time. This small ship that you can see in the front here is the size of one of Columbus's ships. This is a ship that was used by the Chinese, much, much larger, much more capable. So my point in this slide is simply to say, obviously, there's been exploration that's been undertaken since the beginning of human existence. Most of the time, we don't know too much about that. A lot of times, it's small tribes that are moving from one location to another as hunter-gatherers, but certainly by about the 1st century BC, there is a serious exploration that is underway with people documenting what is taking place. And we see this in the aftermath of that as well. But what I really want to talk about are the three great ages of exploration. And I want to divide them up in this particular way. There is a first age that one could say took place from the 15th century to probably the 18th century, roughly. And it's basically water-based exploration. It's people sailing vessels to other places. And it's a part of the European expansion beyond the borders of Europe into all the other parts of the world, and as they came to dominate all of societies everywhere. Asia, the Americas, Africa principally, Australia as well. This water-based exploration, I've got an individual slide that looks at each of these. I'll talk about it more. Dominated during that first period, about 4 centuries worth. In the second age, the 16th to the 19th centuries, you find an era in which the explorers get off these boats and move inland and start to fill in the maps of the great continents of the earth. And give us our understanding of the geography, the peoples, the natural history, and so forth of these new places that they have come to from Europe. And then the third age is really 20th century and since, where they are now moving into areas and exploring regions that require artificial means of support that cannot survive the nature. So there are some common attributes to each of these three ages, right? And I think it's important to kind of understand some of those. The first is there must be a political will to do it. That political will is usually built around some practical application, not through some grand vision of, hey, it'd be cool to go do something or another. So there has to be a political reason to undertake it. There has to be a stable and productive economic base, or it will not be undertaken. Societies that are on the verge of collapse, that are on the verge of civil war, that don't have any economic resources to them, are not going to be engaging in exploration. There has to be a public approval. That's a part of the political will, but it's a separate thing as well. Or at the very least, an acquiescence. If you've got a king who says, I want to do this, he may not require a vote from the citizenry of the realm that he rules, but there has to be a basic acquiescence that they don't riot in the street because of this. And of course, in a democratic society, it's much more involved than that. You have to physically go and approve of such things. There must be enabling technologies. If you cannot physically undertake these things and successfully accomplish them, then it simply will not happen. we've had several mentioned already today of ships that enable people to move to other places. The Norse certainly had that, ocean-going vessels that enabled them to cross the North Atlantic to go to Greenland. Those enabling technologies made it possible for the explorers to move out, to be successful in their exploration, and to return home. When they undertake this exploration, whatever they learn in the process has to be incorporated into the body of knowledge of the civilization that they represent. In this case, I'm thinking largely of European civilizations writ large, and the scientific knowledge has to be brought into this. And when I say scientific, I'm also talking not just about flora and fauna, but also about the geology, the geography, and other aspects of what they come in contact with. That has to be incorporated into what we know as a society. And if it's not, the exploration effort will become stillborn. And then finally, there has to be these good reasons to explore. Again, this is linked to political will. Mostly it's about economics, sometimes it's about security, national security. Sometimes it's about prestige and pride, sometimes it's about knowledge. Most of the time it's about all of them at some level. Those are common attributes of all of the three ages, and we see them in the space age as well as all of the other ages earlier. Now, the first great age of exploration, obviously you've got ocean-going vessels that make it possible for Europeans to move beyond Europe in ways that they had never been able to do before. Prior to the 15th century, most of the vessels were limited to things like the Mediterranean, which is obviously a pretty good-sized sea, but is not exactly the Atlantic, certainly not the Pacific. And it's with the development of new types of ship capabilities that they are able to move. It's with the development of navigational aids that they're able to undertake these explorations. Firearms and weaponry is a big part of this as well. All of those come into play when we talk about the first great age of exploration. Obviously, these are names that are well known to all of us in terms of explorers of this era that have come down and been revered in our history. Columbus, Magellan, Henry Hudson, Cartier, James Cook, perhaps the best and most significant of all of them is Cook, who's around the world exploration. And the circumnavigation of the globe and Cook's scientific expeditions are the preeminent activities of the age. We learned incredible things about the Earth and its continents in the process of undertaking these voyages of discovery. The second age of exploration takes place as the explorers get off these vessels and start to move inland. Now, I will be the first one to admit that the second age really begins before the first age is over. But nonetheless, even with this overlap, I think they are distinct enough that we have to treat them as separate entities. In this particular exploring activity, Europeans